Hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight at our PSYC Grad School 101. My name is Evgenia and I'm student engagement intern in the Department of Psychology. I hope everyone is doing great this term. And I'm super excited because we have an amazing lineup this year. From our speaker lineup tonight, we have Dr. Angelina Polsinelli, Dr. Hasan Domene, and master students Fiza Hasan and Faiza Zaki. Also joining me tonight is my co-host Emily Cole, Student Affairs and Communications Coordinator in the Psychology Department, and Student Affairs Coordinator Cerise de la Cruz, who will be helping us with the Q&A portion later. Also, we have April Zhao today, advisor from the Department of Education, who will be answering your questions regarding counseling and human development minor. So to start off, I would like to begin with a land acknowledgement. As if you respectfully acknowledge the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Catsi, Coquitlam, Hikayat, Kwantlen, Simamayo, and Tawasan peoples, on whose unceded traditional territories our three campuses reside on. I also have a couple of links that you folks can check out. The first link here is by SLC Library to learn more about land acknowledgements, Indigenous initiatives and resources, and then the second link to learn more about the land your home is situated on. Feel free to check it out when you have time. And now I'll pass it on to Emily for some housekeeping.
Yes, thanks so much, Evgenia. So just a little bit of housekeeping for today. So if you folks can just set your Zoom display name to your full name, please also mute during the presentations. So we'll hear from our four speakers for today. We will have obviously a Q&A session at the very end, so please save your questions for that part. So we'll be doing that through Slido. The event is also being recorded. I know some folks had emailed me about that as well. So we will be uploading the video to our website and also to our YouTube channel. Another reminder, so for today's event, it is an event for folks to share their experiences generally with grad school and with their pathway to their current career. So not so much about how to apply to specific programs. So if you do have questions about how to apply to those programs, please check their website for more information. Okay, so for today's schedule, as Evgenia had mentioned, we have a great lineup today. So it's great that we have, of course, starting off with Dr. Angelina Polsinelli, assistant professor in clinical neuropsychology, to begin. And then after that, we'll hear from Dr. Jose Domene, a professor in counseling psychology and faculty of education. After that, we'll hear from Fiza Hasan. She is a master's student in law and forensic psychology. At the very end, we'll hear from Faiza Zaki. So she's a master's student in counseling psychology, also in the faculty of education. So she'll join us in a moment. And then, like I was saying, we'll have a Q&A session just to finish up the event. And then we'll aim to finish today's event at about 6 p.m. Yes. Okay, so just to begin, I will pass it on now to Dr. Angelina Polsinelli. So as I was saying, assistant professor in clinical neuropsychology. I know, Angelina, you had just started in our department recently as well. So great to hear from you for this event. So I'll pass it on to you. You can feel free to, take it away.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yes,
So I
thank
did
you.
just join. However, my grad school experience was a number of years ago. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. Um, so there we go. So just to start off, I'm going to tell you about my kind of trajectory in terms of grad school, how I found myself here. I started off at University of Toronto at Scarborough. In this context, I am a first generation college student. So when I was doing this, I was making my way through this. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea how to forge my path ahead. I bounced around in terms of what my majors were. I was into psych. I took an intro psych class and I became really fascinated with the kind of brain aspects of how the brain could produce some really bizarre neurological syndromes like aphasias and hemi-neglect and things like that. And I switched into a co-op program in psychology. Then came my second year, and I would say I didn't even hit a speed bump or a pothole. I hit a sinkhole. There were some things that were happening in my life at that time that I was not able to handle or manage in an effective way. And my grades went from an A average to a C minus average. So grades took a huge hit during the second year. I even got some low grades in some of my core psych courses like statistics and research methods. There's a reason I'm telling you this, I promise. However, I am very, very grateful to some of the mentors that I ended up having in my third year at Baycrest Hospital. For some reason, they took a chance on me and accepted me into the co-op program to be a psychometrist and do neuropsych testing. And it's really here that I developed my passion for neuropsychology, and I got to be surrounded by people who were supporting me and helping me and really helping me forge my path forward. So they were really, I credit them with being the reason why I even considered neuropsychology as a possibility, especially given that second year that I had. So, in order to make my dreams of being a clinical neuropsychologist come true, I continued to volunteer at Baycrest for several years after my co-op was over. And in my last year, I actually did two honors projects and a meta-analysis for a research class. And that while I took a full course load, so all of this stuff was going on, it was a lot of work, but I also recognized that because of my transcript, I really needed to do something different in order to kind of make up for the fact that my transcript wasn't as strong. I was very swamped with work, and I think I slept in the lab more than I slept at home for the last month. It was exhausting, but I was also applying for clinical psych programs at that time as well. A lot of things going on. But after my fifth year, I did it. Fifth year, not fourth year, fifth year. I did it. I graduated. I had an interview at the time. It was called Ryerson. Now it's called Toronto Metropolitan University. But I didn't get an offer. So I went on to Plan B. Which was Plan B was to take multiple part-time jobs as a psychometrist and a research assistant. I continued to volunteer at Baycrest. I got a paper published. I applied again across Canada this time because previously I had only done it to four places. And this was in the age of sending hard copy applications to schools, not email. And I ended up sending my application for Dalhousie to Victoria and Victoria's application to Dalhousie. So, none surprisingly, I did not get any interviews that year. So, again, back to the drawing board of applying again. So third time is a charm. I applied again across the USA and Canada this time. And finally, I got three interviews and I actually got three offers. So UVic, Queens, and University of Arizona. And starting this process, UVic had been my number one. I was ecstatic to have been offered an interview. And unfortunately, during the interview process, the program didn't seem like it was as good a fit as I was really hoping it was. And so I went back to the drawing board and I thought, I'm going to go to the University of Arizona because why not go live in the desert? But also because the program was really good. The faculty there were very well established and big names in the field of neuropsychology. I should probably do that. And so I decided to take a chance and go to the University of Arizona. But I've learned that going by name alone is not the best way to choose a mentor. Just a heads up. All right. During grad school, I wanted to quit multiple times. I had intense imposter syndrome. I failed my oral comprehensive exams, which is something less than 5% of the students at University of Arizona do. So I'm going to say I'm like the top 5% in that respect, but it wasn't great. It took 8 years for me to get through it. Usually it takes people 6 years. All my grants were rejected. All my friends were publishing, but I didn't get anything published. But I had incredible friends and family who were my cheerleaders and continued to believe in me even when things seemed really, really bad. I was even told by one of my research supervisors that maybe neuropsychology was not for me. So I found adoptive mentors who supported me and helped me through the program. So I failed at a lot of things, many, many, many times over and over again. But I continued to take on responsibilities and projects that I had absolutely no idea how to do. And through this, I learned a lot. I learned a lot of things that I didn't know I was capable of, like I could run a randomized controlled clinical trial as a grad student. I got to teach and I learned that I love teaching. I got to mentor a lot of undergraduate students on their own projects. I organized lecture series for the community of older adults. And I think most importantly, I learned that I can do very, very hard things. Even if I don't know what I'm doing at the beginning, I can eventually learn it if I put in enough hard work. An important lesson. So eventually I completed my doctoral residency at VCH. And then I had mentors and supervisors there who really nurtured my skills and again supported me and really showed me what it meant to be a good mentor. And after that year, I was very fortunate to be accepted to Mayo Clinic for a postdoctoral fellowship, where I was truly like a kid in a candy store. There was there were so many things to do, and I said yes to everything just to get the experience. And I got to learn a ton, even when I didn't know what I was doing. And I really think that that's what set me up for my dream job eventually, which was admittedly not in a dream location. It was in Indianapolis, but I got a job as a clinical neuropsychologist at an academic medical center. I knew this wasn't going to be my final landing place, and so I really wanted to make sure that I was as marketable as possible. So again, I continued to say yes to everything that was offered to me. Community work, recruitment science, working with a multi-site research project as a publisher and clinician. I published as much as possible. I gave tons of presentations at conferences, international and national conferences. And I think this say yes approach is really what got me here to SFU, if I'm being completely honest, because I've done many, many different things. So I'm very thrilled to now be at SFU and getting a chance to teach and mentor and support students and train the next generation of psychologists. And through this role, I get to be constantly curious and learn new things. It's something that I've actually really I've really embraced. Like, I like taking on challenges and learning something new that I didn't know how to do before. And my main area of research is really in ensuring that we are making a lasting impact on dementia care. So not just doing research in the lab and on a university campus, but taking that research and making sure it goes out into the community so that the people who need it can use it. So a lot of community collaboration. Then my final slide here, just some academic lessons that I hope to impart. So I hope that what I demonstrated with my own path is that it may not be linear. It probably won't be linear. And there are going to be a lot of different forks in the road and barriers. But lessons to be learned are that potholes, hurdles, and even sinkholes doesn't mean you can't get into grad school, but it does mean you probably have to make up for it in some other way. Pursuing clinical psychology, if that's what you want to do, takes an almost irrational commitment. There's about a 2% acceptance rate, which means you probably won't be getting in your first try, but don't take that as a deterrent. Just that is the normal course of how this kind of goes. To use that time, build your CV, get extra experiences, say yes to things that even if you don't think that they're within your realm of capabilities, surprise yourself. The hard part doesn't stop when you get in. Be prepared for failure, challenge, etc. When you do get into grad school, and you're going to need to work your butt off. Work-leisure balance is a thing, but it shouldn't be at the expense of learning. Use those opportunities to learn as much as you can during this time. There's going to be no other point in your life where your only job is to learn. Do presentations as much as possible. Learn those skills because those skills help you not only in just being able to present, but being comfortable in a lot of different contexts and with a lot of different audiences. Surround yourself with people who believe in you and can be your cheerleaders, even when you feel like things can feel bleak. Oh, my bad. If you have a choice, don't go with a mentor based on name recognition alone. It's a long relationship. You want to have someone who supports you. There are differences, and I can talk more about this later, about early versus mid versus late career faculty members and their motivations and student support. Be open to new experiences. Leave good impressions on everyone. I regularly communicate with everyone at every single level of any education or experience I've had. I regularly communicate with them. And I use those connections to network for my students as well. And start saving now because grad school is expensive. So I will leave it there. Thank you very much. And I'll pass it on to Jose.
Thank you, Angelina. So picking up right from that, I'm Jose Domene in the Faculty of Education here at SFU. I am, among my roles, I am the director of Surrey Community Counselling. That's the training clinic for our Master's in Counseling Psychology program, located in Surrey. I'm also an associate professor, so although I'm new to SFU, I'm not new to academia. In addition, I am licensed to practice as a psychologist currently in Alberta and BC, although licensing in multiple provinces is expensive, so I might drop that Alberta license. All right, so I'm going to share a little bit about my grad school / career path. I will point out that it's been more than 30 years since I was an undergrad student. So any tips that I have for you about applying to grad school are massively out of date. This is more of a sharing my experience so you can learn some of the things not to do. I did not, although this is a line in the middle of the slide, my trajectory was not linear. I made some pretty suboptimal decisions that we'll jump into. So first of all, I did complete my undergrad in the early 90s, and that was relatively smooth. I did, however, decide halfway through my fourth year that I would be interested in grad school in a counseling-oriented program rather than a research-oriented program. Too late to have taken any of the prereqs during my degree. Yeah, one thing not to do is don't wait until halfway through your fourth year to decide to pursue grad school. Explore those. So because of that, I ended up working full time between my bachelor's and then starting my master's, completing required prereq courses. And as it turns out, a lot of counseling psych programs require a lot of people helping hours. So my work as a disability support worker directly increased the competitiveness of my application. And a lot of counseling psych programs also like life experience. It's relatively rare that somebody will be admitted to start a counseling psych master's degree right from completing their bachelor's degree. So counseling psych master's degrees in Canada are typically 2 to 3 years long. The one at SFU is designed to be 3 years long. The one that I completed was 2 years long. There was a practicum requirement within that degree. Oh, it was also a thesis-based master's. So there was a practicum requirement within that degree. I was fortunate enough to finish that practicum, finish my degree, and be hired in the same large organization where I did my practicum. So specifically child and youth mental health, first in Abbotsford, then in Delta. And I worked as a mental health clinician with a master's degree for about 3 years. I was passionate about clinical practice when I started that process. I had set aside thoughts of pursuing a doctorate until I started to burn out from clinical practice. So by about halfway through my second year and into my third year, I had burnt out and decided that the solution to clinical burnout is to apply to a doctoral program. Do not do that. I can tell you that doctoral programs, especially clinically oriented doctoral programs, are not a solution to clinical burnout. So I started a PhD in counseling psych at UBC, but because I was still burnt out of clinical practice, I had some troubles with the clinical side of things. I actually ended up having to redo my clinical comp and ended up switching the focus of my degree. Again, very unusual. That's not a typical option, but it was a different degree focus within the same department. So I ended up switching to a purely research focus, after completing all the counseling psych coursework, ended up with a PhD in measurement, evaluation, and research methodology, a pure research degree, and sort of thought I had left clinical practice behind. Now, fortunately, during my final year, while I was working on my dissertation, I managed to get a faculty position. Far easier to do that back in that decade than it is currently. So I did transition into academia, full-time academia, teaching in a counseling psych grad program, but teaching the stats and research related courses. Yeah, so I've been working in academia since 2004. I was fortunate enough to uh, be awarded a Canada Research Chair at the University of New Brunswick between 2009 and 2018. So I moved out to the East Coast to pursue that. And it was during that time, finally, as I had the space to do research and think that I was doing more and more research relevant to counseling practice. And I finally sparked my interest in becoming a practitioner again. So, in contrast to what you should do, post PhD, I decided to pursue licensure as a psychologist on the side of a full-time academic job. Again, do not do that. It was a long process, facilitated by the fact that I had all the required coursework already. Um, yeah, so I've been a licensed psychologist since 2014, gradually moving more and more into clinical practice as my passion, and which brought me to SFU, where I do a lot of my job. I do some teaching, mostly clinical supervision, and research is sort of on the side of what I do currently. So I'm aware of the time. I apologize for going long, but I just want to spend one brief slide talking a little bit about why counseling psych. So here in BC, at least, you cannot license as a psychologist with a master's degree. Sorry, why counseling psych masters? So here in BC, you cannot license as a psychologist with a master's degree. There are provinces where you can do that. And if you're interested in working as a psychologist at the master's level, you would need to move to those provinces. And honestly, pursuing graduate degrees in the provinces where that's possible is better than doing your master's in BC and then hoping that will prepare you for licensure elsewhere. But I'm going to focus on BC situation. So a counseling psychology master's will allow you to work in psychotherapy or in clinical counseling. Counseling is currently unregulated in the province of BC, but we're in the middle of developing those regulation standards where the protected act of psychotherapy will be something that licensed psychotherapists will be able to do. In addition to that, if you're interested in family therapy or couples counseling, that's a possibility with a master's degree. And finally, if you are a teacher and looking to move into school counseling, a counseling psych master's degree is possibly the best route that you can pursue for you to pursue that career direction. If you're interested in formal psychological assessment, to be honest with you, other specializations within psychology, school psych, clinical psych, neuropsych, have far more intense training in formal psychological assessment than counseling psych does. So if that's your passion, counseling psych masters is probably not for you. I say not interested in doctoral studies with a star. It absolutely is possible to pursue doctoral studies with a thesis-based counseling psych master's degree, but it is not required. So some clinical psych in Canada, a lot of the programs are combined master's PhD programs. Counseling psych, they tend not to be. And here at SFU, we don't have a doctoral program in counseling psych. We only have a terminal master's degree. So if you're interested in grad school, if you're interested in doing psychotherapy, but you're not interested in a PhD, counseling psych master's degree might be the right route for you. And finally, it absolutely is possible to pursue a thesis-based master's. But if you are not interested in research, many counseling psych programs have a course-based option. So you will not need to do a master's thesis as part of your master's degree in counseling psych, unless you want to. In addition, the part in parenthesis, or did not complete an honors thesis, although if you are interested in pursuing a thesis-based master's, although an honors thesis is an advantage, it's not a prerequisite. So lots of folks with psych undergrad degrees who were not able to pursue an honors thesis but are interested in research end up focusing on counseling psych as a way to do that. And so just to wrap up, one final bonus tip. If you're looking for counseling psych grad programs in the country and you're wondering why you cannot find them in departments of psychology, they're not located in departments of psychology. In Canada, in contrast to US and other countries, counseling psych programs are either located in faculties of education, SFU, UBC, or faculties of health. UVic has moved their counseling psych program into their health, and Athabasca is another example of that. All right, so I apologize for taking a couple minutes extra, but let me now pass the baton on to Fiza.
Hello, everyone. So I'll be going first. Just a heads up, I really wanted to match my picture, so I'm wearing the same color hijab and I did not have the same jacket today, but it's still black, so it counts. Anyways, my name is Fiza. I am a master's student in law and forensic psychology. I am hopefully finishing up on April 14th is the day I'm defending my thesis. Afterwards, I'll be going into the PhD program, still at SFU, but we'll talk about that later. For now, my supervisors are Doctors Deb Connolly and Heather Price. So Deb, you might have heard of. She's in the faculty Department of Psychology, but Heather Price is at Thompson Rivers University. So, but she did graduate from SFU, and then I'm part of the Children's Memory Research Group. All right, so let's start with my academic background. So I started in 2018 at University of Calgary. My undergraduate degree was in Bachelor's of Science for Psychology. At that point, I knew I was interested in going into some area of psych, but I wasn't really sure what exactly I wanted to do and if it was research that I wanted to go into. So what I did was in 2020, I decided to reach out to some labs at UFC and just try to get into as many labs as I could, get some experience and see what everyone else was doing and if that was something I could do myself. I won't lie, it was a very daunting experience when you see all of these grad students doing research and they look like they're so good at it and you're like, wow, you could never be doing the same thing. So I was really sure that research was not for me. But then I was involved in two labs, and both of those labs offered me an honors position. And I was like, oh, wow, that's a great opportunity. I was really scared, but I was like, you know what? I really like these supervisors. So I decided to do an honors thesis with both of them. So I had two supervisors. By the way, I'll warn you, if you hear some like kid in the background, that's just my nephew, and he will not let me go. So he's not dying or hurting. He's just making noises because he really wants me to play with them. But ignore him. Okay, so what's it called? Where was I? Yeah, so I ended up doing my honors thesis on mind wandering and executive function in children ages 8 to 12. And it has nothing to do with what I'm doing right now, but it was such a great experience because it taught me how to do research, where you start from conceptualization and you go all the way to knowledge dissemination and you present at these conferences. And it made me feel so confident that at that point I was like, okay, I really do want to do something research related, and I think I'm ready for grad school. But then I started thinking, am I really ready for grad school? Or do I think I'm ready for grad school because all my classmates are saying they're going to grad school? So in 2020, when I was about to graduate, instead of applying for grad school like all my other classmates were doing, or most of them, I decided not to because I didn't want to do something just because everyone else was doing it. And I really, really wanted to make sure that I wanted to do it and I didn't regret my decision later on. At that point, really felt like if I applied to grad school and I got in, I couldn't go back. So I just wanted to make sure. So then what I did was I took a gap year, and while I was taking gap year, I was looking at profs I might be interested in working with. And I was really interested in working with Deb and Heather. And I met with them, talked to them, and I was like, okay, I think I'm ready and I want to apply to SFU. So I applied to SFU. I did apply to two other programs, but those programs I was not interested in. And I only applied because my friend, so here I thought I really was beyond like, doing what people asked me to do. But when my friend told me to please, please apply to these other schools, I did. But I didn't get into those ones. I did get an offer from SFU, but when I got an offer from SFU, I also received an offer from University of Calgary with the prof I was working with. And she was like, "We really like you. We want to keep you. So will you consider staying here?" And I was like, "Ooh, now it's between staying at University of Calgary and it's going to SFU." Now, the thing about University of Calgary is it's not really big on law and forensic research. It's really big on IO research, cognitive development, but it has nothing to, it really doesn't do a lot with law and forensic. And I really, really did want to do law and forensic related research. So I made the hard decision of going to SFU. Don't let my supervisors hear that. That was not a hard decision. I love them. Um, just in case they hear this. Anyways, so then in 2023, I got into SFU. And my first year, what happened was there was a strike with all the TA stuff. So like after my first month at SFU, I was home most of the time because there were no classes, and I was like, well, am I in grad school or am I just hanging out here in BC doing what I want to do? Um, and then, but afterwards, once things went back to normal, I started doing a lot of different things. I started meeting people, doing research in my area. It started off really slow because my supervisors really just wanted me to focus on doing a thesis. But once I had a thesis going, they let me do new things. And now in 2026, here I am with like 8 different projects. Because I am, like Angelina said, just say yes to everything you get. And that's what I do even now. Just say yes, and then I regret my decisions and I go like, gosh, I have no life. But I really do enjoy what I'm doing. Um, so I do also recommend saying yes. But you do have to, eventually, you do have to start being a little bit picky. And you start saying no to opportunities that don't let you grow. So that's where I'm at right now, where I'm like, okay, is this actually going to be beneficial, or am I just going to be stuck doing something that is not new and not interesting to me? So, based on that, I have some tips and advice for people pursuing graduate studies. My first one is don't apply because everyone else is doing it. This is really important, and I will keep emphasizing this because it's really, really easy to just do what other people are doing it and then be like, I don't even know if this is what I want for myself. So you really want to be sure. I took a break, thought through my options, and I suggest doing the same thing if that's something that you can do. And also, taking that break really allows you to do things that can help you prepare for grad school, like get a job and make some money so that you're ready when you want to go to grad school. And then another thing is getting involved early. And I mean getting involved in labs and also any relevant volunteer experience outside of labs that you can get. So a big thing is in my current lab, when I have a lot of research assistants come to me about grad school, they're in their last years and this is their first time doing any lab related work. And they say that they want to go to grad school. So, most of these students want to go into clinical psych, but they have no experience doing any research or any other relevant experience that would help their applications. So because of this, I suggest getting into labs early, even if it's just one lab that you want to start off with, and getting any relevant volunteer experience that might help your applications. So for me at University of Calgary, like I said, it was not big on law and forensic research, but I did do, I was involved in like developmental and cognitive labs. And then outside of the university, I was involved in volunteering at the courthouse and also with like former convicts, so that I could like put that into my application, even though it has nothing to do with what I do now. It's still like good information, so you can be like, oh yeah, I've done this. I have some experience with some court stuff. I know how some cases work and all of that stuff. And then another thing is doing your honors. Um, like, I don't know if it's needed for every grad school, but most of them do look for students who have done their honors. So that's something to think about. And also, this relates to getting involved early because if you're already involved in labs, you have higher chances of being able to do an honors with the supervisors you're interested in. And then thinking through the logistics, this has been brought up already, and this is a big one. For example, thinking about where you're willing to live and how you will afford it, because you don't just want to make decisions based on what seems like this was your dream and you really want your dream to come true if you can't really actually make it work. Um, And then my personal grad school experiences, and these are also actually based off of mine and the people I started with. So I just like kind of put them all together and I was like, well, this might be relevant for everyone. So the biggest thing is picking a supervisor you will enjoy working with. I love working with my supervisors. Let me make that clear. Just in case they ever watch this, they won't, but like I actually do. They're so funny and they actually laugh at my jokes. So that's a really big one for me because that makes me feel so funny. But I know some people have like a really hard time working with their supervisors, and even though they're like, oh yeah, these are really big people in the field, so I want to work with them. Yeah, you don't just want to be stuck. And I know this was brought up before again, so I will say that too. You don't just want to be working with someone because they're big in the field. You want to work with them because you think you can build a good relationship that'll last for a long time. And then in the beginning, this applies when you move from a different city. It might feel really overwhelming and lonely, especially if you don't really know anyone and your cohort seems like closed off too. I know a lot of people I started with felt this way. They were lonely and it was overwhelming because you're like taking all of these classes and you're like, I don't know if I'm cut out for this. That's okay. Like even now, like years into the program, I still feel like overwhelmed sometimes because I'm like, I'm doing so many different things, but that's normal. Um, and that kind of relates to my next point, which is when sometimes it gets challenging and repetitive, you have to ask yourself, like sometimes you may be like, oh my gosh, because I feel this way, does this mean I don't want to do this? But you should ask yourself, do these feelings outweigh why you're here and what you want to accomplish? And if they do, then maybe, yeah, you should consider going into a different program. But you know what? Most of the times it's just you're feeling overwhelmed and you just need to take a step back and relax. And then this I really debated on putting this here because I really don't believe in this sometimes, but I had to because I needed to sound a little bit motivating. If you feel like you're behind, you tell yourself that grad school isn't a race. And sometimes, okay, look, I tell myself this and it's like it makes me feel better. Yeah, okay, fine. Doesn't matter if all my core members are ahead of me. But then sometimes you do like you can't help it and you feel behind and you feel like you're an imposter for being here and struggling and while everyone else seems like they're doing so well. But these are normal feelings, and you're gonna feel this way. And my supervisors tell me this all the time that they still feel this way. And what you have to do though is work through those challenges. And it's not bad to feel afraid and worried about certain things. You should instead be working on making sure that you work through those challenges and think of it as learning something new. And when you think of it like that, it feels so much better to be behind or feel like you're stuck somewhere because then you look at everything as an opportunity to move forward and grow. And yeah, that's what I have. So I'll pass it on to Fiza.
Hello, hello, my loves. My name is Faiza. Um, yeah, thank you for having me. Do a quick introduction, she, her pronouns. Um, while Fiza is at the end of their program, I'm just beginning mine, so you're getting two different spectrums of the grad school program. I'm my first year in counseling psychology, MEd. A little bit about my work history is that I'm also the operations coordinator at Vancouver Pride Society. I'm not doing the MA. MA is for the people who are doing the research section. I'm only in the MEd. And so I don't have a research, like, I don't have a research project. I don't have a research supervisor, but I do have theoretical interests. I'm particularly interested in interpersonal therapy and I'm interested in DBT. I also want to particularly work with couples, so I appreciate that Jose's brought that up. Um, and I do also, even if you're not in the MA program, one of the things we've learned very first day of class was that you could still be involved in research and get that opportunity. So you still have that opportunity before, if you want to get that before heading into PhD. So there's other ways to do it too. Um, I have my research interests are in intersectionality in queer lives, in couples and relationship dynamics, usually like power imbalances. I'm also interested in ADHD and neurodivergence in adults. SFU has a ton of different labs to get involved in. Um, yeah, so I'm probably going to get involved in the next few years while I get settled in my program. Okay, let's go into my history. Um, Undergrad and work experience. So I did graduate from SFU in 2021. Don't age me. Don't worry about it. Um, but I graduated in communications, not psych, not education, nothing to do with counseling psychology at all. I had no idea this was the field I was going to go in. And I also did do a honors degree, and it was with Dr. Kate McKinney. My research was on why sexual violence against queer people is often overlooked in the Me Too discourse. The Me Too discourse was quite big back then. Um, I also talked a lot about, I also joined a lot of clubs. So I was a tour guide, I was a cheerleader, and the biggest one that I did was I was the events manager for her campus. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because those stepping stones of clubs, volunteering, etc., really get you into like I said, they're stepping stones, so they get you where you want to go. From her campus, I went on to do a co-op with the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade. I was planning events for the Prime Minister at the time, Justin Trudeau, um, Ellen DeGeneres when she was in town, and all because I was the event manager at a club that I got that opportunity, which then led me on to different events opportunities throughout my life. So, even if it seems small, it's like, oh, it's just a club, it's just a volunteer opportunity, it's unpaid. They're stepping stones, they're building blocks into getting even greater opportunities. In terms of my work experience since graduating, it's mostly been events. I'm an events girly through and through. I have been an events girly. Um, I had a I had a full-time job with Vancouver Pride Society, operations coordinator, but I've also done Burnaby Pride. I did Dragon Boat. I'm gonna do FIFA this year. Um, Events is I feel like it's one of those things that once it has its claws on you, it's impossible to get out. And I do truly love it. And I'm also involved in a lot of weddings. Not my primary gig. I prefer to do larger festivals, but actually no, I don't prefer it. But I do weddings as well. Um, and then I've also done the crisis line for quite a bit. That is a little more towards the counseling sector. And one of my biggest gigs was I started uh a counseling thing for queer youth in my very conservative Muslim country. And that was one of my first opportunities of practicing counseling. And I got to pull a lot from my life experiences of doing that. Um, but the main thing I'm saying through all of my work and my life experiences, listen, majority of my cohort, we were in different fields. Like a lot of us were not in the counseling psychology program or the field. Um, and we did that flip over. So if you're doing that flip and you're trying to figure out, hey, how do I need that experience, blah, blah, blah. It's still possible to use your experiences so for example, in my application when I talked about Vancouver Pride, yes, I've written grants and whatnot, but what I pulled from was I did a lot of crisis counseling on site for people who were overwhelmed at large festivals. I also did a lot of DEI training with all the volunteers because I manage all the volunteers. So there's things you can pull from your life experiences that aren't necessarily directly correlated. Um, anyway, that's a little bit of me. Okay, tips for the application process. Listen, if I could, you don't have to listen to the rest of my presentation, but please listen to me when I say network. Like it is the most, I cannot express how important this is. Talk to your boss, your supervisor. You're going to need those reference letters. Talk to your previous professors. Gonna need those reference letters. Talk to your future professors. Are they even a fit for you? Mentors and alumni of the program, y'all, Google is lovely. I appreciate how much information we have at the tips of our fingers. It is so overwhelming, especially when you're researching grad schools and what's good for you and what's a fit. Going into grad school, especially somebody who's not from the field, what's the difference between Masters of Arts versus Masters of Education in the same program? What's There's also like you can be a social worker, you can be a counseling psychologist. Do you need a PhD? How do you get a PhD? million questions are going to come up. Alumni of the program, mentors. When I say mentors, I'm saying people from like my crisis line who are already in the field, people, professionals in the career, stuff like that. Ask them. That's what they're there for. I have had so many meetings with previous alumni and mentors being like, I don't know what I'm doing. What do I say in my application? Um, and I truly believe the reason why I got accepted into all of my programs is because they were able to guide me into these. I also say family. I gave my application to my sister, my older sister. She looked like I asked her to eat grass, Like she tore that application apart through and through. And that's what you need sometimes. Like go to somebody who is able to look at that application not from a nice perspective, but from like, hey, this actually sucks and you need to rewrite it or something better. That constructive criticism. Start early. Applications are really long, especially if you're applying to multiple schools, which you should be, by the way. The SFU Counseling Psychology program only accepts 12 to 18. That number is varying, sometimes 12, sometimes 18 students. And I believe they get like almost 400 applicants per year that they need to sift through. So acceptance rates are quite low. It is quite competitive, so I would recommend applying to multiple schools, which means writing different statements of intents, making sure your resume is uh, like coordinated for each of them. You need to also ask people to write letters of recommendations early. I asked my boss like 3 months early, and then she had an accident and couldn't write it until the last day. So things happen. You will still need it. So make sure you're getting on it early. Get feedback before submitting. Like I said, ask somebody well, obviously ask like older mentors as well. Alumni are really helpful. Reach out to me if you need me to look over it. But also somebody who will give you that feedback and get those prerequisites completed. I come from a communications background. I had none of those prerequisites. So a year ago, like a year before I applied, I started getting through those prerequisites. And then I didn't get accepted into a class that was mandatory during the summer term. So then I had to take it in the fall as well. It happens. Things happen. Make sure you're getting it done. Okay. These two are more specifically about your application. Find your niche. So reflect on your focus and the problem you want to solve. Why do you want to be in this program? Just being like, I want to help people. We all want to help people, What specifically? Who? How? So when I came in, I realized that there was not a lot of people of color in the field. And there was even less queer people of color. Let's get that out of the way. So I realized there was a big gap, and I wanted to bridge that gap. I want to be a queer person of color in the field and start working towards that. Um, so find where your niche is and, drive that story. Find aligned faculty and network. Find somebody who works with your niche. Talk to them, you know, professors, and mention this niche everywhere. This is your story. Write it in your statement of intent. Talk about it in your interview. Use your Blair horns. Do what you need to. And, and in your statement of intent, be specific. Talk about your niche. Talk about what you need to, like, why you're interested in this program. Mention your lived experiences. They're just as important as your work experiences, as your GPA. Who you are, your background. You need to be well-rounded. You need all of those experiences. They're just as important. Align with program and faculty. I already said this, but mention why you're interested in the program. I would also find one or two professors that work with the niche that you're interested in, the problem that you're interested in, and talk about why you want to work with that professor in specific. Um, yeah, I think align with the program is a big one as well. SFU cohorts are significantly smaller than, for example, UVC cohorts or other cohorts. Um, Are you okay with that? Do you want a smaller cohort? Would you prefer bigger? SFU also, it has like that practicum involved in it. We have the clinic. It's a longer program. Are you okay with that? Um, think about all of that. Practice being concise. This is only for if you get to that interview section. And when I say practice, I had a friend come and stay the night with me, and I kept her up until 5 a.m. just practicing multiple times. I'm not saying you have to do that. That's just the anxious personality style of me. But practicing being concise is really important. So, because it is a group interview, there's four of you. Okay, some friendly reminders before I finish off. Normal to apply more than once. Very, very normal. Majority of my cohort, honestly, probably the most qualified person in my cohort. Like, I look at this person and I'm like, you were born to be a counselor, had to apply 3 different times before they got accepted. You know, I've also had some incredible friends who I think are so smart and incredible, did not get accepted this round, simply because of research fit or fit with the program. It's hard to get in. There's only 12 to 18 spots. It's competitive. It is okay to need to do it more than once. Supervisor and program fit is important. I already talked about this. Apply broadly. Apply to more schools than you think. You need to have some backup schools. And if you don't want to go to your backup schools, then be okay with having to do it multiple times. Consider finances is a big one. So the way this program is built is that our classes all start at 4:30 p.m., which means you technically can work full time if you want to. Would not recommend personally. There is a lot of work outside of classes that you need to do, uh, but it is possible. So if you want to continue working full time or part time, think about how you're going to do that. Yeah, your story is your strength. That's a big one. Talk about your lived experiences. Find that niche. And y'all know what I'm gonna say. You know it. Network. Find anyone who's willing to talk to you and talk to them. I think that's it. This is where to find me. If you want to network with me, I reached out to alumni during my uh, research process, and they were able to help me out a lot in my application. Let me know, email me, find me on LinkedIn. Happy to help you out with your applications as well. But thank you so much. Appreciate y'all endlessly. Love y'all endlessly. Bye.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your insightful and informative presentations. It was really great to hear about tips and your experiences. I feel everyone is feeling really inspired by all of you. So now I would like to quickly introduce our advisor team who will be helping us with the Q&A portion today. So we have Emily Ko and Cerise de la Cruz today from the psychology department. If any of you want to chat with them about postgrad planning or grad school in general, you can email them or make an appointment. Also have wonderful April Zhao, who joined us from the Faculty of Education, who will be helping us to answer questions about completing a minor in counseling and human development. Now we'll head to the Q&A portion. So I just sent a link in the chat. You can scan this QR code or click the link in the Zoom chat to access Slido where you can type out your questions or upvote other questions. And yes, I'll pass it to Emily now.
Yes, thanks so much, Evgenia. And also thank you to our speakers. You guys share such amazing gems, and I just love the breadth of experiences and just the breadth of perspectives that we had this year. Fiza, networking, that's key. I totally can relate. Networking, man, is something that I also try to tell our students. And, just thinking about what a lot of you folks had said in terms of imposter syndrome, I feel it too. So I think now is a really great time actually just go into the Q&A. I know you folks have questions, so let's definitely, just going to stop sharing and then I'll just quickly actually just pull up the Slido. So the Slido is in the Zoom chat. So what I'll do is I'll just share my screen. And then I'll just read off the questions in the Slido. So it actually looks like there's like some questions now. So let me just quickly share it here. And so for the speakers, if you folks want to chime in and just answer any of them, feel free to do that. So the folks at home, if you guys want to upvote any of the questions, pop any questions in the Slido. So, okay, so let's begin. Maybe let's see what we have here. Okay. Maybe I'll begin with this question here. So, maybe the folks, in education counseling can kind of point to this because this is something that I'm also curious about. I know that there's been very much limited spots, right, in counseling psychology. So I'm wondering, Faiza, Jose, if you guys can speak on that because I'm also quite curious as well why this might be the case. Yeah,
I can start that off, and I
sure.
will
Go
say it's
ahead,
not
Jose.
just
Yes,
counseling psych.
yes. Right,
Most
clinical
of the
too.
applied
Yes,
psychology graduate
yes,
programs have
Thank you
limited
so much. I'm
spots.
not fully
yes.
sure about the answer.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. And one of the main reasons is the quality of the education.
Mm,
So there are some institutions right here in the Lower Mainland across the country that do admit much larger cohorts than we do at SFU. For us, because of our cohort model, which means for the most part, a group of students will follow through the degree together. Our clinical experience, there are limited spots in clinic and it's counseling practicum, external counseling practicum are difficult to come by. So we choose to prioritize the quality of the educational experience over the quantity of the applicants that we admit. If you are interested in a program or in programs that maximize the number of people they admit, those programs do exist in Canada. SFU is not one of them.
Yeah, thank you, Jose, for sharing. And Angelina, I know you mentioned in your slides, I think you were saying like 2% folks get in. If you want to speak on that as well, because I know clinical is also quite competitive.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
for the same reasons that
Yeah.
Jose mentioned, it's
Yeah.
quality over quantity. So we actually take classes between 5 and 7 every year. So very small classes, but that is because you are paired with a research supervisor, and there's a bottleneck in terms of how many students a research supervisor can have, and then what are like Jose said, the practicum experiences that are available in the area.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Faiza, if you folks want to chime in as well, anything to add there? If not, I know there's another question here, and it looks like we have about half an hour, so we'll do our best to get through the questions as they're coming up here. So the other question here, the difference between an MEd and an MA and an MEd, and I think Faz, you kind of touched on that a little bit, so I'm not sure if you want to maybe chime in on that in terms of the differences between both. Yeah.
Sure. So MA, Masters of Arts, initially has a research component to it. You're doing research whilst you're in your program throughout the 3 years that you're here. MEd does not have that research component. Instead, we have to take an extra course, school counseling, and we also have an exam at the end, which I'm pretty sure is just a presentation of case conceptualization for a client that you work with throughout your term. Those are the big things. Pros and cons, MA, if you're interested in doctorate programs, if you're interested in research, yeah. MEd, if you're not necessarily that interested in research, or you would prefer to do research in other ways rather than individually with a counselor, such as joining a lab, for example. Um, And yeah, I think those are the two big differences. I don't know if anyone else has any other ones.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I also would say kind of what we were saying before, if there are like specific questions about like application wise, definitely check the website because there's going to be a list of prerequisites and just in more detail, a difference between an MA and an MEd, which also varies with the program, right? Whether it's SFU, UBC, etc. Okay, so thank you, Faiza, for
Sorry,
that.
Emily, I just
Yeah,
Sorry,
want to,
Jose, go ahead. Yeah,
can
go
I
ahead.
just highlight? So
yeah.
yeah, this MA, MEd distinction definitely is a BC thing.
Mm,
In other programs, you'll have course-based or thesis-based Masters of Counseling MC degrees. When I was working at the University of New Brunswick, there was a thesis-based MEd or a course-based MEd.
mm,
So don't get too caught up on the MA, MEd. Instead, focus on, am I applying to a thesis-based degree or a course-based degree?
mm,
And there are some variations in requirement beyond am I doing a master's thesis or not?
mm. Yeah, it's a good point. Varies also not just by program, but also by province, kind of as you were saying, Jose. Yeah, thank you for
I
that.
also do want to say in the
Yep.
application process
Hmm.
for the MA,
Yep.
there's an extra essay that you have to write
Mm,
about like your research interests and whatnot.
hmm
I was initially interested in the MA as well, but things happened during that time and I wasn't able to get that extra essay in.
Mm,
There's still other opportunities for research, but just consider that that's, again, start early.
mm,
That's also part of the MA thing.
mm. Faiza, can I ask you too, when you applied to master's programs, did you only primarily apply to MEd programs or you also did MA programs for like other universities?
I applied
Yeah.
so broadly. Like I
Mm.
applied to Masters of Social Work.
Oh,
You
okay.
know,
Mm,
I applied to family counseling in the US.
mm,
Whatever would get me to the end goal at the end of the day. Like there are ways to, transition in and out.
mm. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah. Thank you,
This
Faiza.
was my first priority though.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you, Faiza, for sharing. Okay, so I think we're good there. I know it looks like there's a question here. So the question here is, will you consider honors as more important or work experience more important? Should I be prioritizing honors or co-op? I'm not sure if any of you folks want to chime in. Fiza, you had mentioned you did honors, right? So I'm not sure if you want to add to that. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Hmm.
I definitely think if you're looking to like at least in psych, if you're going into grad school, your honors would be more important unless like
Mm,
your work experience is like really, really something relevant to what you want to do. And it's like, because I have come across people who haven't done an honors or like done some sort of project that is kind of like relevant to doing an honors, but not it's like adjacent to an honors, but not actually an honors. Um, but they have like really cool work experience that relates to what they want to do. And that's kind of what impressed their supervisor. So that's what made the supervisor take them on.
mm,
So I guess it kind of depends on your supervisor as well, who you're interested in. Most people do an honors because especially if you're going into experimental psych, you want to be able to show that you can do research independently.
mm,
And that's why it's really helpful to do an honors. But
right.
I don't know if this is just relevant to psych degrees.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. I also think this kind of ties into the other question in terms of, would they recommend a counseling master's versus clinical master's? It goes back to what you folks were saying, right? Asking yourself, is this what I really want? And also, what is my kind of future goal? Do I want to become a clinical psychologist? Do I want to become a counselor? And kind of what Faiza was saying, like who do I want to work with, right? Just I think really asking those questions yourself, because I feel like for the most part, when I talk to students, a lot of them will say, okay, want to go into grad school, but they don't really know kind of potentially what the end goal might be. Oh, Faiza, you have a hand up here. Feel free to chime in. Yeah,
Yeah, I also
yeah,
want to reiterate that
yeah,
like work experience and getting at least a few years of experience
yeah.
was quite important for the counseling psych program. Um,
Mm,
when I was asking professors in the program, what do I need? At least a few years of experience. And in order to get that experience, that co-op is really helpful.
mm,
So I would not suggest applying right out of university. That's very difficult to get in like that. You
yeah,
need some work experience to
yeah,
fill that application.
yeah, definitely.
Can I sort of support? So yes,
Hmm.
both are absolutely important for counseling psych.
Mm,
I will point out that it is much easier to get post-bachelor's relevant work experience than complete a post-bachelor's honors thesis project. So that might
mm,
be something to consider in terms of, well, which of these things, the honors or work experience, do I do within my bachelor's, and which do I do in the years between my bachelor's and when I apply for my master's?
mm. Yeah, that makes sense. And I think just kind of what you were saying, Pfizer, too, just in terms of like, I know some folks want to apply right away after graduation, but it also helps to just take a step back and really figure out like, do I want to do some work experience, take a break, travel, really figure out what I really want to do, right? Yeah, so I think that's something, folks can consider before they just kind of dive right in. Um, Okay, so let's look back at the questions here. Looks like we've answered that. So kind of just I was just touching on this. So there's a question here, would you recommend counseling masters versus clinical masters? Obviously the differences, which I feel like really depends on yourself, right? And kind of your future goals. I am curious, maybe I can ask Angelina. I know you were talking about kind of your pathway, right? And just kind of your journey through, the 8 years with grad school. So maybe if I can ask you, kind of like when did you realize that you wanted to do clinical psychology? Like, did you consider counseling before, or kind of what made you kind of realize that this is what I want to do? Yeah.
Yeah, kind of actually to Jose's point,
Yeah.
I knew I wanted to do assessment, which meant clinical
Mm,
psychology. So
okay. Yeah.
it was basically right from the get-go that I knew
Mm,
I was that I knew that I didn't have any other options
yeah.
than to go into clinical psych because
Mm,
assessment was really what I wanted to do.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. And maybe Jose, if you want to chime in too, just in terms of kind of touching on what Angelina was saying. I know you mentioned a little bit about assessment and just in terms of there was a slide about kind of what counseling psych is about, but you can also, if you want to chime in there. Yeah.
Yeah, so right at the beginning,
Mm,
when I decided I wanted in my final year of my undergrad,
mm,
when I decided I wanted to pursue clinically oriented grad school, I applied to both.
mm,
Counseling psych is where I got in, frankly.
mm,
Now, obviously, in the decades since then, um, I would argue for the merits of counseling psych over clinical psych. For many reasons. But that's at least a bias because I work in counseling psych. But to reiterate Angelina's point, if your
mm,
passion is in psychological assessment, counseling psych is not the right fit.
mm. Yeah. It makes sense. Yeah. Thank you, folks. Anything else to add there? All good? Okay, I'm just going to mark this off here. And so for the next question, so if your GPA meets requirements for master's, but it's not super competitive, let's say, I don't know, it's like 3.0, 3.1, what can you do to still get a chance of getting in? I know a lot of students, I feel like they have this question in terms of what can I do, right, to make myself competitive? Oh, Angelina, feel free to chime in. Yeah.
Yeah, so so my advice,
Mm,
because this is what happened to me,
yeah.
is you have to find other ways to kind of like what I can't remember who it was
Mm,
talking about, but getting those additional life experiences. So the standard is
yeah.
GPA honors project, blah blah blah. That's
Mm,
the standard way, but
yeah.
it doesn't have to be the standard way. But then you got to figure out the ways in which to supplement. So, like I said, I did two honors projects and a meta-analysis. I
Mm,
continued to work at Baycrest. I worked as an RA.
mm,
So I did everything I could. I couldn't change my GPA, but
right.
I could do things around my GPA that made me a stronger applicant to show my dedication to the field. So
Yeah.
that was my goal.
Yeah, yeah. It's a very holistic view, kind of what you were saying. It's not, of course, GPA is one element, but there's
Mhm.
ways to obviously boost your application through what you folks were saying. Work experience, references, I think is also key. Talking to your profs, getting those good references definitely, would be helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Angelina. Yeah, anyone else want to chime in for that? I think we've answered that. Okay, so the next question here is actually, I think maybe more so for April. There's a question here about how to declare into the minor in human development and counseling. So actually, a lot of our psych students do add this minor just because they have an interest in counseling. I'm not sure, April, if you are there, but I think we can put in the chat there. But if you do have questions, just email April. Ask her, how to declare. I think there's certain requirements or prerequisites for you to declare. And then once you have those done, you can email April and they can add it for you. Yeah, so it should just be prereq based. Yeah. Okay, for the next question, kind of more about volunteer experiences. So, the question here, where can I find legitimate volunteer experiences for entering counseling psych? 400 hours is significant commitment to someone new to this field. Faiza, Jose, if either of you want to chime in there. Yeah.
Can I just clarify that
Mm.
$400, not dollars, 400 hours
Hours, yeah. Yeah.
does not have to.
Oh, I think you're just on mute there. Yeah, there you go.
Okay,
Yeah.
it does not have to be volunteer experience. It can also be work experience.
Mm.
So because I worked for 5 years before I
Yeah.
applied,
Yeah.
I counted so many of those hours and it put me way over. But also, the crisis lines are pretty much always looking.
Mm.
It's a really good skill to have. I think it
Hmm.
really prepared me for this program for when I started practicing for clinic and whatnot. It's a good skill to have. They're always looking. I think I got almost 200 hours at no, I got over 200 hours at the crisis line before I applied, just to show that, hey, I have that events experience, which is relevant, but also I have something directly involved in counseling as well. Um, so please work is,
Get the
please
experience.
get some
Yeah.
work experience.
Yeah. 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 Well, was it the BC crisis line that you did, Faiza, if I can ask?
No, I actually did the crisis text line, which I believe is
Oh, okay.
based in the US.
Oh, okay, okay.
I can't remember why exactly I did that one.
Yeah.
But they were accepting, they trained me. I got
Mm,
200 hours,
yeah.
and I got to kind of log in whenever I needed to. So I would do
Mm.
night shifts after my work.
Oh, so it was
Uh,
remote, I'm guessing. You could just do it like
it
at
was
home.
remote, and so you could
Oh,
log
okay.
in and get the hours whenever you needed to, and they would log
Mm,
your hours and whatnot. So that was
mm.
super helpful.
Wow.
Also got mentors from this program who helped me figure out what I wanted to do. Yeah.
Wow. It's amazing. That's great resource for folks. They want to check it out. Yeah. Great way to get more experience. Yeah, thanks, Fiza. Okay, so I think the next question here is for Angelina. So the question is, what do you look for in a potential clinical neuropsychology student? Great question. Is it okay to have no experiences in dementia or if I'm passionate about neuro? Yeah,
Yeah, so I mean, with the caveat that this is specific to me because I think
yeah.
because I'm coming from a slightly different background than most academics. I am a
Mm,
clinician at heart. I come
yeah.
from a clinical background.
Mm,
For me, what's more important is a clear demonstration of commitment to patient and clinical care, and community involvement. It's preferable to have a volunteer or some kind of experience working with older adults to show commitment to that community. It's not required, but yeah, I would say, but not everyone is like that, and that. There won't be as much maybe emphasis on that kind of like clinical aspect, especially in a research program. So don't use that as your gauge for like everyone. But that's for me, that's really important.
mm,
It doesn't have to be dementia, but it has to be um, clinical
mm.
community focus of
Right,
some
right.
kind.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And Angelina, I think you said you had a lab too, right? Was it Together Dementia Lab? Are you
Yeah,
are you
together.
like
Yeah.
recruiting or in the future potentially? Folks
I'm
always ask. Yeah, yes, yeah.
I kind of am. I'm
Okay.
just waiting on I have current research assistants in the lab,
Yeah.
and so I'm waiting to kind of get the schedule from them. I have
Mm,
two grad students joining in the fall.
yeah.
Not sure what's happening after that, but yeah,
Mm.
together in dementia care, there will be a website soon.
Okay, great. Yes. And you can reach out to me for that, Angelina. I can help you set that up.
Okay,
Yes,
thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah. And actually on that note, I know a lot of students have questions about getting into labs. So we do send out every Thursday an opportunity bulletin to our students when there are positions, RA positions that's, being posted. So keep an eye out on that email. We'll send it out every Thursday. Yeah, so thanks, Angelina, for sharing that. Okay, so that question's all good here. Let's see. I think this question might be also maybe more for April. So there is a question here, and folks, you can also chime in. Um, are there benefits of doing a minor in counseling if you want to go into counseling psychology? Um, I think Faiza, you had mentioned your background wasn't in education, right? It was communication. Yeah. So, April, if you want to chime in, if not, anyone, Jose, Faiza, if you guys want to speak on that. But it seems like from what I'm hearing, it's very diverse for counseling. Not that you have to have it. It might be helpful because you are taking courses in counseling. But I don't think it's like, of course, prerequisites are required, but in terms of having a minor, I think it's helpful. But of course, it might depend on the program. Yeah. And if any of you folks want to chime in, yeah, Faiza, go ahead.
Sorry.
If I'm not wrong, I
Yeah,
think the minor
yeah,
actually
yeah.
has a lot of the prerequisite courses.
Yes, I believe so. Yes, I think there's about two. And April, yes, feel free to chime in there about that. Yeah,
So lots of requirement for that minor set you up for the prerequisite requirement, additional requirements for master degree in counseling psychology.
yeah,
For example, education 323,
yeah.
theory in counseling, and also helping relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So those two courses are popular ones for psychology students. So if you have the minor declared,
Yeah.
definitely you can access the reserved seats. So it will make your registration a little bit easier
Mm,
because we do have lots of students without that minor declared. It's hard to get in.
yeah, yeah.
It's,
Yeah, and they fill up pretty quickly too, right? The upper division education courses.
that's
Yeah,
right.
they're quite popular. Yeah,
So
yeah.
the minor declared,
Mm,
registration will be a little bit
mm,
to be clear. So you have to finish the lower
mm-hmm,
division requirements first.
mm,
Lower division requirement will be educational psychology,
mm-hmm,
developmental psychology and
Mm-hmm.
methods in either psychology or education.
Mm-hmm.
Those ones are also like a prerequisite for master degree counseling as well.
Okay. Yeah.
Prerequisite complete within that minor.
Yeah, thank you, April. And I think everything's actually on the website too. So I believe April, if they have the prerequisites, they can they email you, or there's a form that they can fill out to do the minor, to declare it
So yes, they can declare through the online. So you can just Google it like counseling.
on the website. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, April. Yeah. And she has her email too in the chat. So if folks have questions about the minor, definitely send her an email. Yeah, and then she can answer there. Yes. Thank you, April, for that. Okay. Let's take a look here. So the next question, sorry, it might be also for you, Angelina. There's another question here about clinical neuropsychology. But anyone else, you guys can also chime in if you'd like. So the question is, how and where do you get work experience for clinical neuropsychology as an undergrad or alum?
Recent
Yeah.
grad, yeah.
Yeah.
So as a recent grad, there are potentially opportunities to apply for jobs as psychometrists. Or like at hospitals or private clinics. Neuropsychologists are oftentimes looking for people with people to test the clients or the patients that they are seeing. So you can get experience that way. For undergrad, it's a lot harder. Typically, that's going to be maybe shadowing, like in neuropsychology, it's going to be shadowing neuropsychologists.
Yeah.
It's going to be working in like a neuropsych lab if possible, or a cognitive lab, because a lot of cognitive labs will do some of the neuropsych testing or cognitive testing sometimes. But it's a lot harder, I would say, as a like before you've graduated to find those.
Right, like undergrad, yeah.
I will say I did meet with someone in the co-op program about trying to figure out ways to increase co-op opportunities
Okay.
in this area. So
Yeah.
maybe stay tuned in that
Yeah.
respect.
Oh, that's really good to hear because I was always curious for co-op if there was opportunities kind of more in the clinical area. But that's great to hear, Angelina. Yeah. So, yeah, folks keep an eye out if there are more postings. I think that's great to get experience during your undergrad. Yeah. Thank you, Angelina. Okay. For the next question, let's see. So someone here, kind of more for counseling. So someone had mentioned, is it true that counseling psychology is more about life stressors, while clinical is more about psychopathology and more serious mental health conditions? If any folks want to chime in on that. Yeah, Jose, go ahead. Yeah.
I can start that
Sure.
conversation.
Yeah.
So both ends of that is a stereotype.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there are absolutely clinical psychologists who work
Yeah.
on life stressors and well-being, etc. And just as there are counseling psychology, folks with a counseling psychology background who do work with more serious mental health conditions. When I shared my career journey, when I was working as a mental health clinician in
Yeah.
child and youth mental health,
Yeah.
we would see clients with diagnosed disorders who were too severe to be referred elsewhere. It was outpatient. I was not doing the diagnoses, but I was doing the treatment with them. So with a counseling psych masters. So yeah, that is a stereotype. It's an easy way to
Common one.
separate.
Yeah.
But the reality is when you look into where people, once they've completed all their education practice, there's actually quite a lot of overlap between counseling psych and clinical psych.
Yeah. And even within clinical, there's different sub areas. Like, for example, Angelina, your focus is clinical neuropsychology, may or may not cover psychopathology, right? So there's different areas in clinical. And Angelina, if you want to speak on that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was
Yeah.
the neuropsych. I can't
Yes.
speak to the
Yeah.
I can't really speak to the whether like the stereotype aspect of
Yeah.
that. But yeah, in terms of, I mean, in clinical psychology, there are specializations, but
Yeah.
everyone gets the same education. So I had to be trained in therapy. I had to be trained in psychological assessment. I had to do practicums in both of those things, even though I also then had the additional experience in neuropsychology. So technically, I am competent to practice as a therapist,
Yeah.
doing psychological assessment, but I don't because my area is psychology.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
really good to know because I feel like there is that really common stereotype, like it's either or, but I feel like there's so much overlap between like clinical and counseling. Yeah, yeah. So thank you, Angelina.
I,
Yeah,
I
Jose, go
I
ahead. Yeah,
think I think the bigger distinction
yeah.
is competency in conducting formal psychological assessment.
Mm, yeah, good point. Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Jose. Thank you, Angelina. Okay, for the next question, maybe I will ask you, Fiza, if it's okay. There's a question here. Someone had asked, when you apply for law and psychology masters, do you always reach out and have interviews with potential supervisors before applying? And maybe you can kind of share your experience with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just nice thing to do when you're wanting to apply to, and work with someone. Because
Mm,
with like clinical and experimental,
yeah.
experience was that you email the prof first and see if they're actually looking for students.
Hmm.
So I reached out to Deb, for example, at SFU, and I said, "Hey, I'm really interested in working with you. Here's my CV and transcript. Are you looking for students?" And then Deb was like, "Yeah, let's actually meet and talk." So you might get a supervisor who says, "I'll actually talk to you after you've already applied," but Deb wanted to talk to me before I applied. Um,
Mm,
so we did that and then we talked and then I submitted my application. And then once my application was submitted, she reached out again to talk with me. Um, so we did that twice. So I think it depends on the supervisor. Probably a good sign, maybe if the supervisor is wanting to talk to you and hear from you again. But I think, yeah, it kind of depends on the supervisor if they have time to talk to you before you apply or not.
mm. Yeah. By the way, Deb loves you. I was just chatting with her and because I was just in her car and we're just chatting about, her experiences. So Fiza, she loves you. Yes, yeah. And thank you for sharing
Thank
that.
you.
Yes, thank you. So I guess Fiza, just to follow up, so you reached out to her before you applied to SFU? You guys already had a connection then, I'm guessing. Like you were in touch
Yeah.
beforehand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so like
Oh,
because the applications were due in
yeah,
December, I reached out
yeah,
to her in September. So yeah, that's actually a good reminder to
yeah,
reach to the prof earlier on,
yeah.
and show that you're interested in working with them.
Yeah. And kind of what you were saying, you actually didn't do your degree at SFU, right? You were at different university.
Yeah, I was at University of
Mm,
Calgary and I had
yeah,
no research experience doing anything law and psychology related.
yeah, yeah.
So but yeah, it worked out still because Deb was
Mm,
like, and I see, sorry, can I there's another question that I saw
yeah,
somewhere
yeah.
about GPA.
Yeah,
There
yeah. Go
was,
ahead.
oh
You
yeah,
can also,
sorry, it
yes.
came up before
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah, yeah.
There was a
Go ahead.
question
Yeah.
about GPA and how
Yes.
would you get in still? Would you
Yeah.
be if you're not competitive in terms of your GPA? And
Mm,
actually, that was something I had asked Deb about.
mm,
Um, because I once got confused because University of Calgary is on a 4.0 GPA scale, but SFU is on a 4.33, and
mm.
I was thinking of my GPA
Yeah.
um on a 4.33 scale, and I'm like, whoa, I did not make the cut. Like, what was going on here? But then
Mm,
and so I was mistaken when I was asking Deb this question about why would you take me on if I didn't meet the GPA requirement?
mm-hmm.
Turns out I did, but I was confused for a second about the scale. But she said she didn't even look at my GPA. She was more focused on my research experience because she thought that was impressive as an undergrad student.
Oh.
Um, so that's something to think about as well. If you're
Mm,
like, oh, I might not make the GPA requirement,
mm,
like what type of experience you might already have that you can use on your application.
yeah, yeah. Thanks for sharing. I think it's so cool too because, like you weren't even at SFU, but you were still able to connect with her, send her an email, and she probably, saw your research experiences, your publications as an undergrad. So
Yeah.
that's, yeah, that's really great. Yeah, thanks for sharing that,
Yeah.
Fiza. Yes, yeah. Okay, great. I know we're kind of getting to the end. 5 minutes, 29 questions, but for anything that we can't get to, I think we'll just do our best to put them on our website. So maybe we'll just try like two or three more questions here. Um, so this one I think is also kind of counseling related. This question, is getting a course-based master's enough to be a good therapist? Is there not some debate surrounding provinces that have MA level versus PhD level therapists? Jose, I think
Uh,
maybe, yeah, if you want to
I can jump in,
chime in.
having
Sure. Yes.
having
Thank you.
worked in like half the different provinces in Canada.
Yeah.
So, okay, there's actually two different things going on in the question that I'd like to
Yeah.
separate out.
Yeah.
First, psychology is regulated across Canada. So clinical psych, counseling psych, etc. In some provinces, to become to become a psychologist, you need a PhD, including BC. In others, Alberta, you need a master's degree. Um, Both of those have competency requirements. So if you complete the coursework and other requirements to license as a psychologist in those provinces, you can work there.
I'm not graduating in 4 years. Okay.
Counseling and psychotherapy is only regulated in half the country, and every province that regulates counseling, not psychology, has set the bar at the master's level. In contrast to psychology, there are no provinces that require doctoral level education for licensure as depending on the province, registered psychotherapist in Ontario, or a counseling therapist in many of the other provinces. So counseling is not regulated at all in BC. It's in the middle of that. I suspect that when the licensing of psychotherapists comes in BC, not I suspect, I know it'll be at the master's level, not at the doctoral level.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that, Jose.
Can I also
and
quickly
Faiza,
step
yes.
in?
Yep, go ahead. Yeah.
I think the question's asking, is a course-based master's enough to be a good therapist? I'm going to answer that because I am in the course-based program.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Whether you're in the course-based program or in the research program, we're all taking the exact same courses. We're all having the exact same struggles. We're all complaining about the same things and getting excited about the same things. The only difference is they're doing some additional research, which you can also do with labs. So even if you're in the MA, you're still taking the exact same courses as the people in the course-based ones. So you have the same learnings. You'll be as good as the next guy.
Well, and I would even make the argument that if you're not distracted by doing a master's thesis, you have more time to focus on the clinical aspects of your degree.
Yeah, good point. Yes. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I think now that we are getting to the very end, and it's great to see all the interest, especially this year having both counseling and clinical and experimental perspective. So maybe I'll just end here just with one question here. It seems like someone had asked, are there any career options that would allow me to work with children besides becoming a school counselor? And I know, Faiza, you're kind of more in the advanced area, but I'm curious, maybe just from your cohort, do you know of anyone who maybe did, worked with children before they got into their current cohort? Yeah.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
There's two of them.
Yeah.
I think they're just interested in doing like counseling for children in general, not
Yeah.
just school or
Yeah.
family counseling as well.
Yeah.
That's another one.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know of any other ones, Jose, but
Yes, community agencies absolutely hire counselors to work with children and families. And as I mentioned, I worked in child and youth mental health outside of the school system, postmasters.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thank you guys. I know it's actually 5:59 here. I think we'll try to probably wrap it up here. So for the questions here, we'll probably just put them on our website. Luckily, we did record today's session, so we will upload it and put it on our website. But first off, can we please give a round of applause to our speakers today for doing such a great job, sharing your perspectives, and I'm so grateful that I can hear from each and every one of you. I think you all had, breadth of experiences and, just some nuggets that I heard, things like obviously networking, imposter syndrome is a big one for me as well. Don't give up. It's going to be a long journey, whether it's grad school, right? Or even life, let's call it life, right? But I think the big thing is also just asking yourself, what is it that you really want? It's going to be a journey if you want to, go into grad school, but, make those connections, talk to your profs, talk to those in your network. And I'm sure it'll all work out for you. Whether you do grad school or not, I'm sure it'll work out for you. Yeah, so thank you again. Thank you to our wonderful speakers. Yes, so we will be in touch with folks who register. We'll send out a survey if you guys want to fill it out. Let us know how the event went for you guys. And we'll also, like I said, post the video and the questions on our website. Yeah, so if you guys 6 o'clock now. If you folks want to share anything, go ahead. Otherwise, I think we'll wrap it up here. So thank you guys for coming. Thank you, students, for coming. I know it's getting to final, so thanks again for taking the time to come. Yes. Yeah. Thank you, guys. Thanks to the speakers, and thanks to April, Cerise, and to our Evgenia, our co-host. Yes. Take care, guys. Yeah. Bye-bye.